It's not how you should greet someone elder than you, baby. Then Jimin looked towards Mr. and Mrs. Kim, who were looking at him totally confused and shocked. He bowed to them and greeted them. Taeyang, I guess he's too much shocked. After all, I am his professor. Mrs. Kim, wow, that's nice. You both can go to university together after marriage. Jimin, why do they look so familiar? He said to himself after he saw Mr. and Mrs. Kim. Mr. Park, please take seat. He said to Mrs. Kim and Hyung, who were yet standing, while Mr. Kim was already sitting. Both of them nodded as they sat there, while Mr. and Mrs. Kim were talking to Mr. and Mrs. Park. Hyung was just looking at Jimin while smirking, so Jimin did the same. He kept staring at them. It seemed like they were doing staring contest. Soon Jimin was fed up, so he whispered to Mrs. Park, Jimin, Mom, can we talk for a while? Mrs. Kim, what is it? She whispered back. Jimin, please come. Mrs. Park, alright. Excuse me, I will excuse myself for a while. I have something to talk with Jimin. She said, getting up with Jimin. They went outside the restaurant. Mrs. Park, what is it? Jimin, Mom, why is it him? Not get married to him, Mrs. Park. Vmin, I already told you. Just listen to me. We are not going to choose someone bad for you. You know, right? Jimin, I know, but he's the same professor I was talking about yesterday. He is so annoying. I don't want to marry him, please. I literally hate him. Mrs. Park, it's fine. After you will get to know each other, you will also fall in love. I know him from a long time. He's really a nice guy. Jimin, but he was interrupted by Hyung's voice. Hyung, Mrs. Park, would you mind if I want to talk to him for a while? Mrs. Park, not at all. Go ahead, she said, tapping on Jimin's hand slowly and moving from there. Jimin, sure. Why the heck are you here? Hyung, are you going to talk like this to your professor? Oh, sorry, to your husband? Jimin, you are not my husband, and I am not going to marry a old man like you. Hyung, so I look like an old man to you? Well, I'm just 3 years older than you. Jimin, what? Hyung, yes. Well, can I know why are you wearing the same color as me? Did you already know I like grey color? He said, teasing Jimin. Jimin, it's just a coincidence. Hyung, oh, is that so? He said, going towards Jimin. Jimin, yes. How the hell am I supposed to know when I didn't even knew you were the person I was going to marry? And I am not at all going to marry you. Not in this life. Hyung, but I am going to marry you. And that's on next weekend. Jimin, what? When did this happen? Hyung, when you left with your mother. Jimin, shit. I didn't expect Appa to go this far. Hyung, but he has already gone. What are you going to do now, my wifey? Jimin, don't you dare to call me that. Hyung, is my wife annoyed? He said again, teasing Jimin. Jimin, I told not don't call me that. Hyung now again started to walk towards Jimin, making Jimin hit the wall behind him. Jimin, what are you doing? Hyung, nothing. Just trying to be close to you. Jimin, don't you dare to do that. Step back. But Hyung didn't listen. He kept going forward until their body was touching each other. Jimin tried to push, but he failed. He didn't know why, but he felt weak around Hyung. Hyung, you can't push me. Don't worry. I have enough strength to control you. So tell me, are you going to marry me or not? Well, you have to, even if you don't want to. Jimin, no, I am not going to. Yeah, really? He said, now leaning towards Jimin's face. Their faces were just a few centimeters away, but Jimin didn't expect that Taeyang would really kiss him, which Taeyang did. He attached his lips with Jimin, kissing him slowly and softly. Jimin was too shocked to kiss him back, which he didn't even wanted to do. But somehow he leaned in the kiss and kissed him back. Taeyang just smiled between the kiss as he continued it. After some time, he finally backed off. Taeyang, wow, as expected taste. Well, more than my expectations. Jimin was still in utter shock to say a word. Taeyang, hey, Jimin, what happened? Are you that much shocked? Jimin finally came to his sense. Jimin, what the fuck? Why did you kiss me? Taeyang, because I wanted to. Can't I even kiss my husband? Jimin, I said I'm not your husband. Taeyang, so you didn't like the taste? Well, I thought you would like. Jimin, why? Why did you take my first kiss? Taeyang, cause I couldn't wait till marriage. Well, I have to say that you are really very beautiful, but you have to improve your actions too. According to your beauty, those actions and those words doesn't suit you. Whatever, I will make you change. Jimin, you can't change me, and I will never do. Taeyang, you will, baby. Jimin, just stop calling me that. Taeyang, you can call me. I won't stop you. Just call me anything you want. Jimin, you bitch. Taeyang, nah, nah, nah. Not that. You can't just curse me. And if you did, I swear I'm not going to leave you. And this time, mind this. Jimin, I will do whatever I want to. Who are you to stop me? Taeyang, I am your soon-to-be husband. Jimin, fuck this husband. I'm not going to marry you. Taeyang, you have to. How many times I have to say that? Jimin, why the hell are you behind me? Can't you just leave? I said I don't want to marry you. Then why are you forcing me to do? Taeyang, because I want to marry you. Why should I get back when I am getting a chance to get married to you? Jimin, please, I beg you, just leave. I don't want to marry you. Taeyang, who is begging here? Isn't this the bad boy of our university, of whom all the professors are scared of? Nobody tries to stop him. Jimin, please stop this. Taeyang, I won't. Just be silent and get married. If you didn't, then the consequence wouldn't be better. You will really regret that. Mrs. Park was there to call them when she saw Jimin and Taeyang close to each other. She smiled, but she had to call them. So she slowly cuffed, grabbing their attentions. Mrs. Park, you can continue that later, but come and eat now. Taeyang, coming. Auntie, you should go. I'll be coming back with Jimin soon. Mrs. Park, sure, we are waiting. Taeyang, I'll be soon. With that, Mrs. Park left with a smile on her face. She was happy to see her son trying to put efforts, but she didn't know what was going on there. Taeyang, look how happy she is. Don't you dare to break that happiness. And if you dare to break our marriage, then remember that you are going to take away that smile from your mother. He said, which definitely made Jimin sad. Taeyang, no need to be sad. Just marry me. I promise I will keep you like a prince if you didn't go against my words. With that, Taeyang backed off from Jimin as he started to leave but stopped. Jimin looked down, thinking something for a while. Taeyang, are you coming or not? Jimin didn't say anything as he just walked, and Taeyang followed him with a smile. Taeyang, don't worry, I will change you, Mr. Park Jimin. I mean, Mr. Kim Jimin. Time skipped. The whole week was irritating for Jimin because Taeyang wouldn't stop giving him plenty of works and asking him not to curse. Plus, he was being so much flirty that Jimin can't even imagine. The whole week, Mr. and Mrs. Park were totally busy with their marriage. works, they were setting all the things. Mr. and Mrs. Kim were also busy in marriage works, so neither of them were able to talk to or spend time with Jimin and Taeyang. During Jimin and Taeyang's pre-wedding shoot, Taeyang tried his best to be with Jimin and make him happy, which he was definitely able to do, but Jimin just shrugged away that feeling and said he was annoying. Taeyang did treat him like a prince. The marriage day finally arrived. Although Jimin wasn't actually ready to get married, but he just wanted to see his parents happy, so he just shrugged away all his feelings and went with the flow. He was very happy to see his parents happy. They were all he needed. Their happiness was the most precious thing to Jimin. When the priest announced to kiss each other, Taeyang did lean towards Jimin's lips, but he just kissed near his lips, not on his lips. Jimin was confused to see this action of Taeyang, but he couldn't ask anything there. It did seem like they were kissing, but he wasn't actually kissing Jimin, and it did somehow disappointed Jimin. He wanted to kiss Taeyang, and he didn't knew why he was thinking like that. When they were greeting the guest who came there, Jimin asked for Mrs. Park for a while as he excused himself. He wanted to ask something from Mrs. Park from a while, but he couldn't ask because she was very busy in marriage works. He took her to the dressing room as he made her sit there. Mrs. Park, what is it? Why do you look so worried? Jimin, I wanted to ask you something. Mrs. Park, what is it? Jimin, well, didn't you promised one auntie and uncle in my childhood and told them I will marry to their son? Why am I getting married to Theang? Mrs. Park, which auntie and uncle? Jimin, that auntie and uncle who used to live in our neighborhood when we were in Daegu. After that, they shifted to abroad and we shifted to Seoul. Mrs. Park just chuckled. Mrs. Park, so you didn't recognize them yet? Jimin, what do you mean? Mrs. Park, oh my boy, he is the same guy. And they are the same auntie and uncle are talking about. Theang and his family just came back from abroad. And I told you that night that they are coming from abroad and they want to meet up with us. We were just completing our promise that we did during your childhood. And you were also happy that you were going to marry Theang. But why aren't you happy now? Didn't I told you about them, Jimin? But I don't understand. How come I don't remember his name? Mrs. Park, you might have forgotten. Don't worry. It's fine. And don't worry about him. I told you now he's really a nice guy. He will really take care of you well. Jimin, I know that. But you should have told me this earlier. Mrs. Park, oh, I'm sorry. I just didn't got time to tell you this. Jimin, it's fine, but Mrs. Park, what? Jimin, how come I don't remember his name? Mrs. Park, because you were not used to his name. You always used to call him weird. Do you remember? Jimin, well, yes. Mrs. Park, that's the reason you don't remember his real name. It's fine, okay? Now let's go. It's already a long time since we are talking, right? Jimin, yes. Mrs. Park, well, I hope I didn't force you to this marriage, or did I? Jimin, no, you didn't. After their marriage, when Mr. and Mrs. Kim, along with Mr. and Mrs. Pal, gifted Theang and Jimin a house, Jimin was not at all ready to go to that house because he didn't wanted to stay with Theang alone. But they have to accept that as it was a marriage gift. When they arrived at their house, it was past midnight already. Jimin and Theang both were sitting in the back seat and Jimin seemed to be very sleepy. He almost fell asleep. Taeyang got out of the car and he picked up Jimin without even trying to wake him up. Although Jimin was not asleep, he didn't care because he knew Jimin was sleepy. Jimin, yeah, put me down. Taeyang, just be silent. You seem sleepy. Jimin, but I can walk, I have my legs. Taeyang ignored his words as he looked towards the house. It can't be said as house. It was so big, totally looked like a big mansion. Jimin, wow. I didn't knew they had such a nice taste. Tang, I know, right? Both of them really didn't expected the house to be this huge and beautiful. Jimin, now put me down, please. He again said, but Tang started walking inside. He took out the keys and opened the door. Taking Jimin inside, he looked around the house and it was literally very huge. Jimin, I don't want to live in this house anymore. Why is this so huge? And we are only two persons. Hyung, why? Do you want a baby? He said, smirking at Jimin. Jimin, yeah, stupid. Hyung just chuckled as he made his way towards the bedroom. Both of them were amazed by the beauty of the house. Hyung made Jimin lie on the bed. Hyung, I'm going to shower, he said as he left towards the washroom. Jimin just looked towards him. Jimin, no doubt your parents were looking so much familiar to me. I wish I knew that earlier. I regret not asking mom earlier. He was lost in his thoughts when Taeyang finally came out of the washroom. He looked towards Jimin, who was confusedly looking towards the walls. He went closer to Jimin as he shook him a bit. Taeyang, hey, what happened to you? Jimin, nothing. He said as he looked towards Taeyang. Jimin, I'm going to shower. He said and ran off to the washroom. Taeyang, weren't you sleepy? I thought I will find you sleeping. Taeyang took his phone from the nightstand as he went towards the bed and sat on it. He removed his t-shirt and threw it on the couch. He was watching phone when Jimin came out of the washroom. But when Jimin saw Taeyang, he was totally shocked because Taeyang wasn't wearing his t-shirt. He turned around. Jimin, yeah, wear your t-shirt. Why aren't you wearing your t-shirt? Taeyang finally noticed Jimin and he smirked as he kept his phone on the nightstand and got up from there. Taeyang, why? I can't be like this. Is there any problem? Jimin, yes, there is. Just wear it. Taeyang, and if I said I don't like wearing t-shirt while sleeping, I sleep like this. He said while finally reaching behind Jimin. Taeyang, it's my habit. I can't remove it. Jimin, it's my habit too. So should I? He couldn't speak ahead as Taeyang cut him off. Taeyang, why not? You can also sleep. He said finally, back hugging Jimin. Jimin felt shivers as his hands touched Jimin's body. Taeyang, you should eat more. Look at you, you are so thin. He said, touching Jimin's belly and waist. Jimin, why do you care? Taeyang, why won't I? I'm your hubby after all. Jimin, fuck this hubby. Taeyang, then do? Jimin, yeah, stop it. Leave me and go wear your t-shirt. Taeyang, I won't. Just remove your t-shirt because you also like sleeping without t-shirt, right? He said, holding Jimin's t-shirt and removing it. Jimin, yeah, what are you doing? Taeyang, removing your t-shirt. He said, finally taking out the t-shirt and holding Jimin's hand, dragging him towards the bed. He made Jimin lie on the bed and covered him up with the blanket. He also got inside the blanket and hugged Jimin from behind. As Jimin was facing his back towards Taeyang, Jimin felt shivers as Taeyang's bare skin touched his, and so did Taeyang. He was also feeling thousands of butterflies in his belly, but he just controlled himself as he kept hugging Jimin. Jimin, why didn't you kiss me today when you already kissed me that day? Taeyang, why? Did you wanted me to kiss you? Should I do? Jimin, I mean you did that day. Then it wouldn't be any different, right? Well, That day I kissed because I heard that you are going to marry the same person who takes away your first kiss. So I did. So that you have to marry me, Jimin. That doesn't mean I was going to marry Taeyang, but you are married to me, Jimin. Then why did you kiss me today? Taeyang. It's because I did that without your permission, but I wanted your permission today, which I knew I won't get. So I didn't kiss you. Jimin, what if I give you permission now? Then would you kiss me? Yeah, of course, why not? So, are you giving? Smiled before saying, Jimin, go to hell. Hyang, I'll go with you. How can I go without my baby?